Good morning. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We're going to get started this morning with some opening comments, and then we will open it up to the media for questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Red Wings Governor, President, and CEO, Christopher Ilitch.
Great, thank you. Well, good morning. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see everybody in person. It's been a while since we've done that. So today is a very exciting day for the Detroit Red Wing organization, and really for all of our Red Wing fans around the world. We're very excited and thrilled to welcome Derek Lalonde as the next head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. We're very excited to have him and his family join the Red Wings family. I also want to mention Steve Yzerman and his staff have done a tremendous job over the last several months. Very, very thorough search process. And in the end, Derek really stood out as the right coach to have behind the bench for the Detroit Red Wings. He's got a wealth of hockey knowledge. He's been extremely successful at all levels, including in the NHL with the two-time Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning. Our fans are the best in the world, and they deserve consistently a team that consistently competes for Stanley Cup championships, and that's what we'll continue to work diligently towards under the leadership of Steve and Derek. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to our Executive Vice President and General Manager, Steve Yzerman.
Thanks, Chris. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming in today. We're able to make the announcement here prior to the holiday weekend, so I hope we didn't disrupt any of your holiday plans, but appreciate everyone coming in. And as Chris said, to see people face to face has been somewhat of a challenging for everybody to do their jobs over the last couple of seasons. So number one, just to reiterate what Chris on Chris's comments, we're very excited to have Derek join our organization. If you all recall, or that for you that were here in April or at the end of April when we made our coaching change, some of the things that I talked about, what I was looking for in a coach, Derek obviously fits perfectly in line with his experience, his background as a coach, his style of coaching, his personality, his way with people. And I think over time you are all going to greatly appreciate the relationships, whether it be through the media, through our fans, through the people in our organization, and most importantly our hockey team. You're going to really appreciate the way Derek runs his staff, his team, and runs his program. So without going into a lot of the details, because I would expect a lot of questions to be asked in that regard, we did I spent a lot of time over the last 2 months looking at coaches from all leagues, all different backgrounds, all levels of experience, and ultimately came down to the decision that Derek fit really all the areas that I felt were important, what would be good for this organization, this team, where we are today and where we're going in the near and far future. So like I said, I'll turn it over to Derek, but we're very excited to have him here with us and look forward to getting to work here immediately.
Thanks. I simply want to thank Chris, Mrs. Ilitch and the Ilitch family, Steve and his management group for this opportunity. It's a huge responsibility, and I'm very excited for the challenge going forward.
Thanks, Derek. With that, we will open it up to questions from the media. If you'd like to ask a question, please just raise your hand and we'll get a wireless microphone over to you. We'll start with Helene St. James.
Derek, what are your first tasks? How will you approach this?
Immediately, it's very important for me to get a hold of each player. I've been a relationship-based coach my entire career, and even talking with Chris up in the room there, that first conversation with each individual is going to be very important to establish those relationships and start that part of the player-coach relationship. We need to get a staff together. I know Alex Tanguay is on board here. I had a bit of a previous relationship with Alex. He checks off a ton of boxes for me, from his playing background, his offensive mind. That's going to be important for me as it is for the management group. We'd love to get him on board on his terms. And then we probably, a huge priority would be that D coach. That's something that we're going to work on here, especially with our young, exciting D corps coming up. I'd like to check that off. and then just start driving forward. So got some immediate plans, then we'll kind of dive into the summer plan, into camp, and get ready for the season.
And Steve, you had mentioned in May you wanted the team, especially to be better defensively as a team. What about Derek makes you think that he's the right guy for that?
Well, we had, it was a little bit of a unique process this year in being able to speak with Derek and interview him. Obviously, with them going all the way to Game 6 of the finals, so we have to be very respectful to him doing his job in the Lightning organization. But just in our conversations within the last week about our his style of play, the way his teams want to play historically, how his teams have played, and I just, ultimately, I think part of the reason the Tampa Bay Lightning have had such playoff success recently was the way they play, and part of the way they play is they really buckled down or really focused on a good solid. They became a good checking team. I think it's important in talking with Derek. I understand his values as a coach, the way he wants to do things, and systems change and adapt over time, but I'm very comfortable and very confident that his approach and his ideas will translate on the ice for us. Leslie,
Chris, your family just rounded 40 years of ownership. I know you were very young when your mom and dad bought the team, but you said the rebuild that time around, where do you think it is at now? And thank you.
When Steve rejoined the organization 3 years ago, he was very clear, we were very clear, we were going to build the roster the right way for long-term success through drafting and developing. And I'm very pleased with the development we've seen of some of our young players, particularly Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond, now succeeding at the NHL level. So, bit by bit, through drafting and savvy trades, Steve's building a young core, but I think everybody fully realizes there's a lot of work yet to be done to get our team to where we want it to be. But I'm very pleased with the progress of our club.
Kevin?
Yeah, Derek, when you went to Tampa Bay, that team was well on its way toward success. Obviously, this team hasn't taken that many steps yet. Is coaching? Is the approach the same, or do you have to coach a little bit differently than you did when you were in Tampa?
I think the process will be very similar. Even the first question, probably hinted more on how we're going to look or where we want to be. I think every team in the offseason looks to improve their team defense, looks to improve their special teams, and we'll be no different. Obviously, those are some areas we'll certainly want to improve in, but we went through a very similar process. We won 62 games. We talk about judging ourselves on process over outcome. And I'm not going to say, and obviously Steve experienced that with me, that we were lying to ourselves or cheating ourselves, but we were judging ourselves on outcome. We were winning games. And then we actually got into the playoffs, absolutely got smoked. We need to improve our team defense. We need to improve the risk in our game. We need to improve what was important for us, those important habits of winning. And I think every team looks to do that. So, yes, obviously Tampa was in a different spot than we are here. We were in a win-now, championship caliber type team. But it was the same type of things that got us from good to Stanley Cup champion. It would be the same type of habits and things within our team that we're going to look to improve here. I think if you do those things, it should translate. It should take care of itself. Its process, and then the outcome kind of takes care of itself.
I wondered also whether John Cooper offered you any advice. I mean, you've been a head coach before, but not at the NHL level. Did he, going out the door, have one piece of advice for you as you moved on?
John and I have a really close relationship. The uniqueness of talking about being in that window and him hiring me and selling it as, you're a piece we want to help get us over the top. And then to do that and to take it to fruition and just the special, there's a bond there. The biggest thing for me is just he knew I was ready and just the confidence. I mean, it was really short conversations in that you're beyond ready. You might even be overripe. I appreciated that. And here I am. So not a ton, but some positives. And certainly that staff and that group and the 4 years I had there was pretty special.
Nick?
I had 2 questions. First for Steve, I think the obvious thing is you were in Tampa when he was hired, but I was curious about the details. Like, did you hire Derek in Tampa, or was that John Cooper? How well did you know him then? How much did that play into this now?
Well, I'll go back. My introduction to Derek was when he was actually in Green Bay, and one of our scouts and I, when I was with Tampa, we're at a game, got to meet Derek, get to know him a little bit through Green Bay, the John Cooper and Derek connection. And now I forgot your question. So
Just how well did you get to know him? Because
Okay.
it was right at the end of your tenure.
Yeah,
I'm just
so,
curious
yeah,
whether that
so,
matters.
Derek was coming in right when we were making the transition from Julian taking over as general manager. And so I was involved in the process, spoke with Derek, interviewed him, spent some time. But ultimately, John Cooper was the head coach, was hiring, putting his staff together, and that will take the same approach. Derek's in charge of putting his staff together. I'll have some input in it too. So I got to spend a little bit more time with him at that time 4 years ago, and since then, Derek's been focused in doing the job in Tampa, and I've been here in Detroit. We haven't had a lot of communication until identified him as a good candidate for the position and was granted permission to speak with him.
And Derek, for you, just in your words, what do you want the identity of the Detroit Red Wings to be? How do you want this team to play, in your words? And how does it match with your personnel right now? I guess my question is, will this team need to grow into the way you want it to play?
Well, we want to be a team that's hard to play against. And the uniqueness of playing within the division and playing as many times as we did over the last couple of years, we saw parts of that where they were hard to play against. They were gapped. They were not giving us an inch. I think our goal is to be a little more consistent in that. I think even probably frustration from you as the media, as you see some of that on certain nights, which is exciting, and why we're optimistic on where this is heading. But I think it was more of that all the time. And again, I referenced Tampa. Yes, we were in different situations, but we didn't get to another level until we play like that. And to me, that translates no matter what your personnel is. Are you above plays? Are you on top of plays? It's kind of those details and habits that lead you to winning. So those will be our goals. I know this is a process. Steve was very clear in the whole interview process that this is going to take some time. We're building the right way, but it's going to be a process, and those are some of the things we're going to look for early on in those habits.
Wojo?
Yeah, for Steve, curious, there were a lot of openings and a lot of experienced coaches available that went to teams. What directed you towards Lalonde more so than an experienced coach? Is it where your team stands right now, or what did you see in him?
Yeah, I looked at all different types of coaches or degrees of experience, as you mentioned, some of the veterans, experienced guys that were out there, and two things that I really kind of focused on were, okay, do I go with an experienced former head coach or one that's available, or do I go with a fresher face, someone who's ready to take that next step to the National Hockey League? That was one decision, and then ultimately the second part was what type of personality, what type of how they run their program, whether we use that term players coach or I don't know what and I feel ultimately I decided, taking all that into account, Derek's personality, the way he runs his program, the environment that he wants to create or has created at all the stops along the way, whether it was in Green Bay, Toledo, Iowa, and being a part of this very successful organization in Tampa. I felt like he was for all the things I was looking at, ultimately became the best fit for our team, where we are, where I'm hoping to go with it. And by no means is Derek just a players coach who's going to be a good guy and all that. I think he's a very good blend of, and this is based on talking to and people that are mutual colleagues, whether it be players, coaches, and whatnot, of how he runs his program. And I thought he was the best fit for this job.
I assume you think this team should or could be more hard-nosed, more disciplined under Lalonde?
I think we can improve in every area, and again, Derek has had good success at every level, and run very good programs, and being a part of it and having a lot of influence, along with a very, very talented coaching staff alongside him with John and the other assistants in Tampa. He understands. He references 4 years ago having a very good team that lost, and then going through 3 different playoff experiences in the last 3 years. A lot of what Derek, he's been around winning programs, he's run winning programs, he knows what it takes. So you can point out whether it be discipline or work ethic, everything we expect and will be elevated, and that's just what good teams do.
And if I could just ask one of Chris, obviously you have 2 teams, the Wings and the Tigers, and both in similar levels of the process, so to speak. How do you maintain the ability to be patient during this and see it, and do you ever get itchy or edgy or impatient to accelerate any of the processes?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I think there's temptation and there's all types of influence and pressure to try and rush the process. But I think having been in professional sports as an organization for now 40 years, having worked with folks like Steve Yzerman, who've constructed a very talented NHL team, Al Avila being part of an organization that constructed and won a world championship down in Miami, you realize, and having seen our own Detroit Red Wing championship teams of the past, you realize that it's a process and it takes time, and there really are no shortcuts. You need to obviously bring in the young talent. You need to develop your players into NHL players or Major League Baseball players, and then you need to assemble them all at the right time and fill in gaps with free agents and trades, and then you got to compete and get some breaks along the way for it all to work. So there's always temptation for shortcuts, or to try and take a shortcut or do something that perhaps would be rash, but generally doesn't work. It takes a lot of patience. It's a process that takes time. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very pleased with the progress at the Detroit Red Wings, and I'm very pleased with the progress at the Detroit Tigers, despite a very slow start this season for our team. There's actually some good progress happening with some of the young guys that have come up and developed and so on and so forth. So,
Brad?
Derek, I'm wondering if you could describe to us what the roller coaster of emotions you've been on in the last week and a half, from being that close to a three-peat and having 3 rings as you walk in here to ultimately losing in the final, but then getting the first NHL head coaching job of your career.
Well, I can comment on the playoff run. That one stung a lot. To be that close, obviously everyone saw the way our team was sacrificing and playing, some of the things we talked about, habits. It was amazing. And the better team won the Stanley Cup. Colorado was the better team. But with that said, as a coach, it stings because it was a winnable series in some ways. So there's going to be a little regret with that. And then just how quickly this turned around, the emotions of it, and it happened fast and it happened intense. So there's a lot going on. I was telling Steve earlier, I rarely sleep in the playoffs. Just the reality of it. You have the 8 o'clock games. You're breaking down film. It's 12, 1 in the morning, and then you turn around. So I already was probably working on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and then Steve called, and then sleep even got less. And then I was even telling Drapes, unfortunately, the special 30 for 30 came out, and I finally was going to get to sleep the other night at about 1:30 in the morning, then it came on. And I was trying to record it. I was like, I'll watch it later, but I was back to a 3-hour sleep night. So it's been a lot, but again, this is exciting. These are 3 Stanley Cup runs to turn into a head coach. It's intense. There's been a lot of emotions about it, but a dream come true. I think anybody would love to be in the situation I am, and myself, my family have embraced it, and we're very excited.
I'm sure a little bit cathartic to see a team beating up on the Avalanche even 20 years ago.
Yeah, it might have brought some joy to me. For sure.
Chris, I appreciate you making yourself available. A lot of owners don't do that, but in saying that, as you make yourself available here, we walk into this beautiful building, and anytime you do talk, fans reach out to us and say, ask about this, ask about that. The district that you promised when it came here, when you opened this building in 2016, and that was 3.5 years before a pandemic. How close is the vision to becoming a reality? What is an update you can give? Is there hope? Because as we look at playoff landscapes in the NBA and NHL, those districts are finished. Cities like Milwaukee will pop up in a couple of years and change the city's dynamic. Is there any update you can provide today?
Yeah, no, there's not much beyond what we've already shared publicly. Very excited about the launch or the announcement of the Detroit Center for Innovation in collaboration with the University of Michigan. And Stephen Ross and his organization. I think that is going to be a catalytic, enterprise that has generated a lot of development in other parts of the country where those types of developments have occurred. So I'm very excited. We've actually continued to build through the pandemic, which is pretty remarkable. We've gotten some great projects finished. And we're going to continue steady progress. You're going to see continued steady progress in and around Comerica Park and Little Caesars Arena and throughout the entire district. So I'm very excited with the progress we've made, and I think we have the potential to even accelerate a lot of that. Again, market conditions and all that has to fall into line, but I'm very optimistic, and we're working hard at it. So we'll see how things unfold, but I have a positive outlook on that.
Max?
Derek, I'm curious, how do you feel you're most different now from when you started in Tampa Bay?
Well, there's a ton of growth there. Obviously, I've coached at every level. I've always had an approach throughout my career. It was never about getting to the NHL. It was never about being the next level. I concentrated on where I was at and wanted to be great in the position I was at, and I think it's probably why I've had some success at every level. So learning the league, it's different. It's a whole different world. I found it to be a little more of a partnership. Good players want to be held accountable. You have to hold them accountable. We will hold guys accountable here, but at the same time, it's a bit of a partnership. So learning the NHL from that, and then the growth of obviously the playoff runs, the intensity was immense, but the growth from the team I'd mentioned earlier, NHL record along with the Red Wings, winning 62 games and not playing the right way to ultimately get where we wanted to be. There was a ton of growth in that. So I grew immensely. Those are experiences you have to go through. My whole career was like that, though. It was never about getting to the next level. It was about growing, being progressive in your position, and the rest of it takes care of itself. And I just think the timing of this, the growth, things I've learned throughout the way, it's perfect. It's time. And I'm very excited about this opportunity, the next challenge in that career.
And then you talked about the calls that you'll have with the players. What goes into a call like that? What are you hoping to accomplish? How do you set those foundations?
Well, those first impressions are huge. I will talk with the management team. I want to get to know their impressions on every kid. I want to be open-minded on every player. I want to get to know them a little bit. I talk about being a partnership. My success has been through relationships, and those first ones. So simple, I want to get to know them. I want to talk about some of their expectations that they have, or their expectations of them individually and as a team, and kind of get to know their why, what drives them, what do they want out of their self, what do they want out of their team, and then that'll be huge information going forward and dealing with those each individuals.
Carlos?
Derek, with what Steve and Chris and even you said about building the right foundation and doing things the right way, the fact is that this last year the Wings were flirting with playoff contention midway through the season, and then obviously things changed. But is there a reason why this team can't make a run for the playoffs this next season? And what is your level of urgency for getting this team back to the playoffs when Mo Sider has just mentioned the team's really hungry to get back to the playoffs when he just won the Calder?
Well, I think I'd have to temper expectations. we got great in Tampa when we literally we started focusing on the process. And I know it sounds like such a cliche, but to sit there and talk about making the playoffs and where we're going to be or putting a number on wins, I think that's foolish, and that can hurt you. It could go in the wrong way. For me, it's going to be the process. Obviously, some obvious things are team defense, some special team improvement, no different than any other team throughout the league. But if we take care of the process and doing the little things, if our team defense improves through our stopping on pucks habits, our risking our game on managing the puck, then we'll be improved, and hopefully that takes care of itself. But I don't know, sitting here now, if that's something that is a goal or talked about. Deep down, of course, we want to make the playoffs. We want to win. Even interviewing with Steve, just the passion of him as a patient manager, selling this as we're in the middle of a process, but man, there's some underlying passion with him too. We want to win, but we're going to do it correctly and in the right way, and it's my job to begin that process, and hopefully we're talking about playoffs sooner than later, but it's going to be about the process.
Just my other question is, you arrive here with obviously a lot of experience on a championship team, one of the great teams, I think some epic wiffle ball skills as well. But what do you think is your greatest strength as a coach, as the coach for the Red Wings moving forward?
Communicator, relationships. I kind of look back, started in my college career in that it's just a different relationship. You're recruiting young gentlemen. I'm telling mom and dad, you're going to trust them and me for the next 4 years. There's a special bond, special relationship, and I carried that with me. I care about the guys. I'm going to care about the guys. We're going to have a very good relationship. I'm going to want to have a relationship. I'm going to want to get to know the guys. And then when those hard conversations do come about, maybe there's some trust there. So for me, it's communication and it's relationships. And as you kind of grow in your coaching career, you start to understand who you are and what's successful for you. And that's me. I've been very comfortable with that, and it'll be the same going forward with this organization.
Ansar?
Yeah, Derek, having coached extensively against this team the last few years, just what are your impressions of, and I know there's going to be changes this summer, but just what you have in place right now, the talent level, what are your impressions of that, and what do you see as the strengths of the players that you have in place right now?
Well, it's always an interesting process playing Detroit, because I think the team you were talking about that was flirting with the playoffs mid-season, that was a really hard team to play against. And so that gets you excited on what it could be. I think obviously the goal is to be a little more consistent with things. And obviously some of the young talent. I don't see them every day. I'm not in an everyday process with them, but you see these guys play and the impact they make at such a young age. It's very exciting. So obviously not all the pieces are there, but at the same time, there's some exciting pieces to build around. So it's attracted me to this job also, in that you could see some foundation being built. Obviously a long ways to go, but there's a lot to work with. There's some things to work with here that really excites me as a coach.
And also, can you just address just the importance of special teams, and in regards to that, how important is it just to have the right assistant coaches in place to take care of that?
Huge. I mean, that's part. I just think synergy within a staff. I was very fortunate to come from a staff where we had unbelievable synergy. We did have people that were the heads or the point persons, if you will, for each special teams, but we really worked on it together. Even within our meetings, we shared meetings. We thought it was very important. So that all-inclusiveness for a staff is going to be very important for me. And I think that will lead to better overall team play and everything. And I think special teams, it's a huge part of it. But today's NHL, of course, special teams are a big part of it, and that's a goal for every staff, and it'll be a goal for our staff.
Jordan?
Derek, I know our conversations over the years, you've always been entrenched where you are, and you kind of mentioned that a little bit ago. When did you start to allow yourself to believe that the dream was becoming a reality and you were going to get this job?
First of all, Jordan, nice seeing you. Obviously, our relationship way back in Toledo. I'm not lying when I say this. It was never, maybe the middle of this year, maybe a little bit of last year. Of course, when we have success like we're having in Tampa Bay, there's going to be that talk. You know, you're going to be on these lists. But it was never about when and where. It really was entrenched in what we were doing in Tampa. And that's been my whole career, whether it was from college to now wanting to be a head coach in junior, and then the levels in pro hockey. It always just took care of itself, and this is another example of it. So it was never about, or I never envisioned, or I never was like, God, this might happen. Probably when this playoffs was over and we fielded some phone calls, and obviously Steve reached out. It's probably when the first time, like, hey, this may happen, but I was very content with staying in Tampa and working throughout that window, knowing I was probably ready. But if the time came, great. But if not, again, I was focused and content on the job I was doing, and that was being as great as I could be for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Sean?
For Chris, what's the, do you have any input on the search like this, or is this let Steve go and he says this is our guy and then we're good? Or what, do you have any input at the day-to-day of this?
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, I have a ton of confidence and a ton of respect for Steve Yzerman and his approach. I've been in business in just about 40 years. I've been a part of a lot of senior leadership searches. I have to say, Steve has been exceptionally thorough and very thoughtful. He knows exactly what he's looking for, and he's just been very methodical and very purposeful in this search. And so I've been very impressed. But more on point to your question, Steve's been great. He's kept me informed along the way. Him and I would talk often, sometimes hours at a time, about various candidates or his thoughts, or what he thinks we're looking for in our next head coach. So this was Steve's decision, and Steve and his team really did an excellent job. He kept me informed along the way. He looked for my input towards the end of the process, and I chimed in a little bit along the process, but by and large, I have a ton of confidence in the process that he followed, and I'm excited. I think, as I said in my opening comments, it's led us to Derek, who I think is an excellent choice as the next head coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
And then for Derek, to kind of steal your word from earlier, you said when you were going to talk to players, you wanted to know their why. So I'll put that to you. What's your why?
Well, I want to win. There's no doubt about it. I probably ultimately don't accept this position if I don't see winning somewhere along the way or down the road or being a big part of that. But at the same time, my why is getting this process in order the correct way, emphasizing the right things that are going to lead us to being successful going forward. So you don't get in this profession if there is not a huge passion to win. But what my career has allowed me to do is understand what it takes to win and the process sometimes that it can take to win. And it's not an immediate thing. We learned that the hard way in Tampa early on there. I learned it in Iowa. I took over an Iowa team in the American Hockey League that we were probably challenged roster-wise with some of the competition we were up against. But at the same time, I had a job to develop some players. That was very challenging. But deep down, no question about it, my why is ultimately going to be about winning.
Last question, Wojo.
For Steve, you had said before that you sometimes find it hard to hire people you're not that familiar with. And obviously you went back to a place you know pretty well. I think you had something to do with building the Tampa Bay program. Is that sort of what drew you back there, replicating that, and is it replicatable here?
Excuse me. Well, first off, you know, I went through the process of identifying who might be a candidate to coach this team, and then just looked at everybody's background and slowly worked my way down to guys who I thought would, you know, a small group that would really be a good fit, and just based on a little bit of research, doing a little bit of homework, talking to people, and ultimately, amongst a few names, Derek's, the more I looked into it, the more I was like, you know, this is a real person who's a really good fit for this job. And where you know, there's people in all, whether it be players, people in the front office, people around the city or whatnot, that said vouch for Derek and really know his, you know, we were in the same organization for 1 year, but I wasn't in the locker room, I wasn't on the bench, I wasn't in the coach's room to kind of see him operate and work, but, you know, looking at his resume, speaking with him, and then and not just in Tampa, but in Toledo, in Iowa, back when Derek was in Iowa, getting, you know, say references, background checks, in speaking with Derek, just got more and more familiar, really understood his values as a man, his values as a coach, his experiences. Just get more and more comfortable with this. As I said, when you haven't worked with someone, you know, we all, you know, the interview process is interesting, and ultimately when you get the reference and the recommendation and the description of the person and the coach and his style, and that from people that you really value, from not from all aspects of hockey or of coaching or of making a hire, it just became more and more comfortable for me. And then ultimately, like Derek's style, his experience, and where we're at, as I said earlier, as a team, it just seemed like, you know, this is a great opportunity for us to bring in a coach with tremendous experience as a head coach at various levels, and coaching as part of a very good staff and a very good program, and I expect him to do things his way, not necessarily the Tampa Bay Lightning way or the John Cooper way. I've hired Derek to do it his way, and I think he's bright enough, and that he's gotten to where he's gotten to by adjusting, by learning, and growing from his experience. And I think his time in Tampa, you know, you say growing over those 4 years, the experiences he had make him even better coach, and apply everything that he has learned along the way and values to our organization and run it his way. And I'm sure he's taken experience, learned lessons along the way, or gotten ideas along the way from every stop in his coaching career.
And did you enjoy the Wings Avs 30 for 30, and did it ignite some old emotions in you?
I haven't seen it, to be honest with you.
What?
Yeah, no, we've been busy, and I'm, at night I fall asleep, so I haven't watched it. Maybe after we get through the draft and in the summer when things quiet down, have a chance to watch it, but haven't seen it. So.
Gotcha.
Chris, Derek, Steve, thank you very much. At this point, we'd like to welcome the still photographers from the back of the room up to the front for a jersey presentation. No, the table's good.